Last Monday, President Biden addressed many of the CEOs of America's leading energy and technology companies. His remarks are remarkable. They show that our present world is being set up to fulfill the predictions of Revelation 13. In Revelation 13, 11 through 18, we see 7 characteristics of the coming world religious leader, the false prophet, the misleader. We need to be alert to these misleading traits today. Satan seeks to get Christians to follow his counterfeit religious leaders in our day as well. Knowing the false prophet's traits helps us to avoid false teachers and not be misled. A couple of verses to show the importance of this is in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. Behold, Jesus says to his followers, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. We need to have a heads up in what's going on around us and the influences that are out there. And in Acts 20, verse 29, Paul, writing to the church leaders at Ephesus, talking to them, he says, I know that after my departure, savage wolves will come in among you, not sparing the flock. And from among your own selves men will arise, speaking perverse things, to draw away the disciples after them. Therefore, be on the alert. We need to be good detectors of false teachers. Now, Revelation 13, 11 to 18 alerts us that the misleader, the worst that there will be, is coming. And it could be very soon. The misleader is coming very soon. We're going to look at 3 things: his misleading appearance, his misleading activities, 7 of them, and our applications, how we can then avoid being misled, as people will be in the future great tribulation period, the last 3.5 years of the 7-year tribulation period. First of all, this coming misleader, his identity. He is the counterfeit Trinity's spokesman. Verse 13:11. Then I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. He's seeing another symbol, another beast of the same kind as the first beast. The first beast was the antichrist, the great pretender, who's going to make that treaty for Israel and then break it halfway through and call himself God. We want to see his henchman today, the other beast, a beast of the same kind, just as the Holy Spirit is another of the same kind as Jesus. They're both monsters. In John's day, a beast that came out of the sea was seen as stronger and more dangerous than a beast coming from the normal earth. So this monster is inferior in power and authority to the Antichrist. He's another beast. He is going to be a phony. He had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spoke as a dragon. He's going to appear like Jesus. Maybe he'll mislead people to think he's the Messiah. In Revelation 5:6, he refers to Jesus as a lamb with horns, 7 horns. Here he has 2. In Matthew 7, Jesus himself said in verse 15, "Beware of the false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves." And in Mark chapter 13, and verse 21 to 23, "Then if anyone says to you, 'Behold, here is the Christ,' or 'Behold, he is there,' do not believe him." And that's the time after the Antichrist sets himself up as God in the temple, the time of this false prophet that we're looking at today. Jesus says, don't believe anyone who says they're the Christ. For false Christs and false prophets will arise and will show signs and wonders in order to lead astray, if possible, the elect. But take heed. You'll know me when I'm coming. I'm coming in the clouds, and every eye will see me. He's called the false prophet. That's in Revelation 16:13, in 19:20, and in 20 verse 10. He is called the false prophet. In 16:13, "And I saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits like frogs," demons coming out of this false prophet. We're told to beware of false prophets. Have I mentioned that? 1 John chapter 4. "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. Because many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. And every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is a spirit of antichrist." Again, what to ask people who come knocking on your door, calling you, is, do you believe that Jesus is fully God and fully man? Right. The first church I had the opportunity to pastor, there was just about 30 folks left when I got there, but their directory had, like 60, 70 people, and so I went out to look at these lost sheep. And one of the ladies who used to be in the church, she was watching her televangelist, and she had just written out a check for him. He was a false teacher. Oh, we need to be careful. We need to know these signs. This is the ultimate false prophet. He will be Satan's spokesman. He will speak as a dragon. He will be a dragon in sheep's clothing. It reminds me of Isaac listening to Jacob when he couldn't see, and he says, "Look, the voice of Jacob, but the feel of Esau," because Jacob was wearing goat's clothing. This man is going to come. He will have the voice of Satan in what he says, in his deceit, in his trick. But he will look like he's a nice guy. Satan's speech. What is his speech like? It distorts the truth. He said to Eve, "Oh, you won't die. Oh, you'll be like God." In 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 14, No wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, so it's not surprising that his followers do that as well. Satan, he speaks of peace. Ezekiel says there's these false prophets who say, peace, peace, but there is no peace. They use flattery. The spirits of the false prophets told King Ahab that he would prosper, do well. So he listened to them. That's the way in which the false prophets speak, and they want your money as well. He's a part of the unholy Trinity. As we tie up verse 11, we've mentioned the Antichrist. That's in verse 12. He exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. There's an unholy Trinity. None of them are God, but they're counterfeit. There is Satan, the persecutor of Israel. There is the Antichrist, who Satan will indwell, who is a great pretender, saying he's God. And then there is the misleader, this false prophet. Oh, and we mentioned in 6:13 all three of them, where they're mentioned. Now, let's look at these 7 activities that the false prophet is going to do. And I do have a couple illustrations from President Biden's speech that shows how close we are for these things coming upon the earth. They couldn't have happened in John's day, literally, as we see it here, but they certainly could in our age. 7 activities, misleading things the coming false prophet will do. Number 1, he will exercise Antichrist's authority for Antichrist's benefit. Verse 12, he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. He will have worldwide authority to act on Antichrist's behalf all over the world. We saw in chapter 13, verse 7, the last part of that authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. And that will be exercised by his vice president, the false prophet. He will have a role similar to Aaron. God told Moses that Aaron would speak on his behalf and do miracles with his staff on Moses' behalf. This one is going to do miracles on behalf of the one indwelt by Satan, the Antichrist. So 1, he will exercise Antichrist's authority throughout the world. 2nd, he will make people worship the Antichrist. The last part of verse 12, and he makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. The word to worship literally means to fall down before, pay respects to honor. When Jesus rose himself from the dead, the women who came to the tomb and they saw him, they just fell down at his feet. Several days later, he appeared to over 500, and we see in Acts chapter, in Matthew 28:17, that they all fell. They worshipped him, bowed before him. This one who's pulled off some kind of a resurrection where he had a fatal wound that killed him and he came back to life. People are so amazed. They think he is God. And they worship. Satan wants worship. In 2 Thessalonians, it talks about how he will go into the temple, declare himself God, seeking everyone's worship. So he will make people worship Antichrist. He will represent Antichrist. Verse 13, he's going to bring great signs that he's from God, but he will not be from God. Verse 13, he performs great signs, so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. Like who was it? Elijah brought fire to burn the animal on his altar. John, who writes this, once asked Jesus to bring fire from heaven to smite the Samaritans when they rejected Jesus. He's doing a copycat of the two witnesses who will do this according to 11:5. If anyone wants to harm them, fire flows out of their mouths and devours their enemies. So he's going to do some amazing signs, and that's mentioned in 2 Thessalonians 2 as well. He will deceitfully lead people to make an idol of the Antichrist. Verse 14. And he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs which it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image, an idol, to the beast who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. He's been resurrected. Some people will take supernatural things that demonically led people do, and they will follow after those for the thrill, whether it's levitation, Ouija boards. We need to be so careful. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, in verse 9, talks about the Antichrist and these things. With all deception and wickedness for those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, who is to be saved. For this reason, God will send upon them a deluding influence. They will believe what is false, in order that they will be judged who did not believe the truth, but took pleasure in wickedness. Oh, people are going to go after these supernatural things. He's going to lead people the wrong way. In Revelation chapter 19 and verse 20, the beast was seized, and with him the false prophet who performed the signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. So he's going to have this idol made and direct people to make an image of their resurrected Antichrist. Aaron, oh, he blew it. He helped build an idol and said, "This is the God who brought you out of Egypt." An image of a calf. Here will be this image of the Antichrist. It was images of Caesars that John would have been familiar with, that people were forced to worship. Now, the fifth thing he's going to do is give life to the image, causing this idol to speak and causing the idol to kill those who will not worship it and the Antichrist. Let's read what it says here in verse 15. It was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak, and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. Now let me just say that God alone gives life and breath and takes away life and breath. But here, it seems he permits the beast to do something at this time that convinces the world that he's brought a statue, an idol, to life. It reminds me of one of the things I read in our president's speech this week. He encourages these technology companies to cultivate tools of artificial intelligence and advance dignity. Opportunity for all Americans is what you've been doing. It really matters. Robots. Bringing them to life, to make them appear. This one is going to be able to speak. I would remember going to Disneyland in college. There was this statue, this artificial intelligence, this man who looked like Abraham Lincoln, and he spoke like Abraham Lincoln. He gave the Emancipation Proclamation, the Gettysburg Address. It just scary. Gave me the chills. This man is going to cause people to worship this idol or to be killed if they don't. Just 16 years later, the Emperor Trajan was told by someone in Asia Minor, who was one of his overseers, Pliny, who was governing that area. He says that those who denied that they had been Christians, I thought, should be dismissed from being executed. If they first invoked the gods in my presence and sacrificed with incense and wine to your image, you worship the image, you won't get executed. That happened just 16 years later in the areas that John was ministering to. This is going to be a terrible time in the history of mankind. People will be forced to worship this image or to be killed. We get a taste of this kind of thing when we hear about Ukrainian children being taken away and slaughtered. This is going to be a worldwide event. As many do not worship the image of the beast will be killed. There will be people from every tribe, tongue, and nation who will believe in Jesus and who will refuse to do this. A great, innumerable multitude. The sixth thing he's going to do is 7. He will cause all classes of people to be marked. The all here in verse 16 means every type of person. He causes all, the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. What does all this mean, this mark of the beast? The small and the great could refer to the young and the old. The mark. The term mark here is used of what was used of a brand to an animal, to a slave, or a tattoo kind of mark on someone. Ptolemy the Fourth, the king of Egypt in the 200 years before Christ, had all the Jews branded by fire with an ivy leaf symbol of the god Dionysus. In John's day, some Roman soldiers branded themselves with a mark of their general. They were particularly fond of him. Look, this is my general. See the tattoo there. Some slave owners branded their slaves with their family logo. This is a mark. It's not necessarily an inserted chip, as many would speculate today. It's a kind of mark that is going to be able to be obviously seen by people. It's a copycat of the mark that God will put on the 144,000 Jewish people that he is sealing with some kind of a mark on their forehead. 7:3 talks about that. And I like what it says in chapter 14. In the end of verse 1, they have his name, God's name, and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. So he's going to imitate that and mislead people to be identified with the antichrist. It will be a symbol of allegiance to him. Isaiah 44 and verse 5 talks about in the kingdom that will be after this. People will write on their hand belonging to the Lord. So taking this mark, people will know that they're saying they're belonging to the Antichrist. The choice of the right hand or forehead is for conspicuousness. Reminds me of the Nazis imposing that the Jews put a star in a conspicuous place on their clothes. Those who receive the mark will receive it willingly. Refusal to take the mark will bring the death sentence. And so we read after the tribulation, the resurrection of those saints who were martyred during the tribulation period. In chapter 20, verse 4, I saw the souls of those who have been beheaded because of their testimony of Jesus, because of the Word of God, and those who had not worshipped the beast or his image, and had not received the mark on their forehead and on their hand, and they came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years. They refused the mark. They died because of it. They're resurrected to rule with Christ for 1,000 years. President Biden is hoping that a new world order will come into this world that will stop the spread of violence by people who are totalitarian. He recognizes that after World War II, we've established a liberal world order. A lot of people dying, yes, but nowhere near the chaos of World War II. But now things are shifting back again. And there's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. And we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it. Basically, he's saying that we need to lead the way in assuring that these totalitarian, expansionistic countries will not spread. And that is to be done by the free world uniting together, as they're seeking to do now against Russia. He gets into things how he believes Putin is backing up and is cornered. And that's all part of his new world order, is to stop these totalitarian regimes from taking over other countries. Well, if it does happen, it won't last, because the Antichrist is going to be the worst oppressive leader, forcing people to take his mark around the world. The final thing that the Antichrist will do is the Antichrist will cause no one to be able to buy or sell without the mark. The global economy is going to be run by the antichrist. He provides that no one will be able to buy or to sell except one who has the mark. That means there's a one world economic system. And Biden talks about the need to cooperate and the need, because of cyber space and cyber attacks that Russia will probably bring, that we need to willingly, because of we have rights in America, people as individuals are protected from taking on government security. But he encourages people to be able to fight against the cyber attacks that are being threatened, to protect your own companies, to provide critical, as providers of critical service that Americans rely on, from power to clean energy, and finally your role can play in helping secure every American and every American's privacy. For example, banks can turn on cybersecurity by default for every customer. So America's financial data is safe, and we're prepared to help you. The possibility of one man having control over the whole world's economy so that they can allow people to buy or sell or not is available if we're willing to risk and take it. Now, what's the mark of the beast? Except one who has the mark, it's either the name of the beast or the number of his name, for they're both the same. What is marked is probably three numbers, 666, and that's the name of the beast and the number of his name. We read in verse 18, here is wisdom, let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast. For the number is that of a man, and his number is 666. The mark will be the Antichrist's name, which is also his number. For example, in John's day, people used the Greek alphabet. And rather than using Roman numerals, in the Greek system, they used the letters of the alphabet for numbers. So the first letter in the Greek alphabet, alpha, was also the number, what we would call 1. It represented one thing. And the next letter, alpha, beta was 2, etc. And then when you get down to 10, you go from 10 to 20 to 30 on through and into hundreds. So let me give you a name. Kins. A hard C-I-N-S. Kins. Some of you have some kins. That number is 3 digits. It's 600, it's 60, and it's 6. It's actually would be 4 digits. Okay, kins. The K is from the letter Chi, which is one of the letters near the end of the alphabet, which is a value of 600. So let's see if we can add this together. You've got Chi, the first letter, 600. You've got iota in kins. That's worth 10. So you've got what, 610. And then you've got N, nu, which is worth 50. We've got 600 660. What letter do we need next? We need the letter that is used for the number, the value of 6, and that's sigma. Chi iota nu sigma kins adds up to 666. And if someone had kins across their forehead, they would have the number 666, because that's what that represents, as well as the name. So if the Antichrist is named Kins, then he will fit. But there are other ways to come up with a name that adds to 666. I'm not saying the Antichrist is going to be named Kins, because there are other letter combinations that could equal that if they're going to use the Greek system. But how do we apply these things? The misleader is coming. First of all, as we mentioned before, we need to evangelize unbelievers. J. Vernon McGee put it this way: I would suggest that we not waste our time trying to identify a person by this number. Instead, we need to present Jesus Christ, that we might reduce the population of those who have to go through the Great Tribulation period, and who will therefore know what the number of the beast is. Second, we need to avoid compromise. Warren Wiersbe writes, an anti-Christian system today pervades our world, and true believers must not be part of it. And he quotes from 1 John 2:15-17, love not the world, nor the things in the world. For what is of the world? The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the boastful pride of life. The world is passing away, and the lust thereof. But the one who does the will of God abides forever. May we be found faithful, doing the will of God, not the will of the devil. Let's not be misled. Lord God, may we be faithful. Amen.